Apologies. The last time I spoke to everyone was before Christmas. It's been over a month. Lots of things have happened in my life. Lots of things have happened in the world of video games. I'm not going to go over everything that happened in January because that would be far too much. I'm just going to pick it up from the more recent things. Also, we've had a bit of a rebrand. We are no longer called News Trash. Welcome to the new and improved GosuNews. Hi, I'm Rob, and welcome to GosuNews. Now, as I said, we are picking it up from the more recent stories, and the biggest of the more recent stories was Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard for almost $70 billion. Now, Activision Blizzard are still one of the biggest publishers in video games. They have numerous developers and studios under their banner, and this deal is just the latest in a number of acquisitions by not just Microsoft, but Sony, Embracer Group, Tencent, and a few other bodies that are going around buying developers and publishers and forming these massive gaming conglomerates. Now, one of the big dangers of this is that you'll end up with a degree of uniformity because different developers and different publishers and different studios all come together in a uniform environment and they'll basically start making uniform games. And you see that already happening when you have carbon copy games from a specific developer or publisher. It's just a reskin of another game they've done. And that's one of the big dangers of having all these developers and studios under one roof. It potentially kills creativity and imagination. Now, that's not the only problem. There is another bigger problem, and that is the idea of a monopoly. Having one company or a small number of companies controlling the entirety of a particular industry. Now, what's happening is that the US Federal Trade Commission is investigating whether the purchase of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft is going to harm competition, and they're actually looking at this instead of the US Justice Department because they are usually more aggressive in their policing than the US Justice Department. Now, on the back of that, Sony announced that they were buying Bungie, who are the original developers of Halo and also the developers of Destiny, for $3.6 billion. Now, for some reason, PlayStation fans seem to be viewing this as Sony punching back at Microsoft for their acquisition of Activision Blizzard, which it really isn't, because according to Sony and Bungie, this deal has been in the works for 5-6 months already, and now it's just being confirmed. In the days that have followed the announcement of that deal, Sony Interactive Entertainment CEO Jim Ryan has done an interview with GamesIndustry.biz, and he has stated that Bungie will unequivocally stay an independent multi-platform studio and publisher. He goes on to say that Bungie will operate autonomously within the Sony Interactive Entertainment organization, and they will continue to publish on other platforms. Now, one of the main reasons why Sony have bought Bungie is because the deal isn't about Halo or Destiny or something like that. It is purely about multi-platform games, and it's about live service games. At least that's what's in it for Sony. On the Bungie side, Pete Parsons, the CEO of Bungie, has basically said that Sony offers the ability to accelerate Bungie's own plans, which includes the prospect of taking their IPs to new entertainment mediums such as TV and films, because that's the future. Multi-platform, multimedia adaptations of particular IP. So you basically milk the cash cow as much as possible. And that's what's happening in video games in general. You see it with all sorts of other companies. Who can forget Riot's coming out with Arcane on Netflix, which was a great animated series, but it's still nothing more than a really big advertisement for League of Legends. Going back to the Sony side of things, there was an investor presentation which has been transcribed by Eurogamer, and in that, a Sony executive called Hiroki Totoki said that Bungie would be aiding PlayStation in a major expansion of their live service game development. Now, during that presentation, it was clearly stated that through close collaboration between Bungie and Sony PlayStation Studios, they aim to launch more than 10 live service games by the fiscal year ending March 2026. Now, that's a lot of live service games, And one of the things about live service games is that they're not always popular, so we'll have to see how that all pans out for them. Moving on from that to something that I think will develop into one of the biggest ongoing stories of the year. I called it at the end of last year, and I'm not the only one who thinks it will develop into one of the biggest stories of 2022 in video games, and that's about unions in video games. Now, this is all started off because of all the problems at Activision Blizzard, and in recent days, Activision's Vice President for QA has stated that unions could hurt our ability to create great games. Now, this is from an internal message that Christian Arens, the Vice President in charge of QA at Activision, has sent out, which has been shared on Twitter by Jessica Gonzalez, one of the people behind the ABK Workers Alliance and the Game Workers Alliance. In that message, Christian Arens states that a union doesn't do anything to help us produce world-class games, and the bargaining process is not typically quick, often reduces flexibility, and can be adversarial and lead to negative publicity. All of this could hurt our ability to continue creating great games. Now, this is where I get a bit confused, because a lot of the problems at Activision Blizzard have come from the fact that the employees at Activision Blizzard don't really have any representation to protect themselves and their rights. And when they put forward the idea of bringing in an external organisation to help them protect themselves from other staff members and from senior management and the executives pushed back saying, "You don't need protection from us. We're nice people. Honest." Now, is it just me, or does that seem damn suspicious? I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that Activision Blizzard have tried to do union busting, and it wouldn't be the first time that any other company like them has tried to do it as well. What I will say is that happy workers lead to good productivity. It's very simple. If your workers are happy coming to work, then they will be more productive, they will be more imaginative, and they will be more trustworthy. It's not rocket science. And if you can't achieve that, then you shouldn't be in your job. If you are in charge of a company and your workers are unhappy, and you haven't bothered to find out why they're unhappy, you shouldn't have your job, because it shows that you have no interest in that company. Right, enough about unions. We're moving on to the other big story that we called at the end of last year, which is NFTs. And oh my god, during January, did that conversation really explode? Everyone and their dad suddenly jumped on the NFT bandwagon. I was amazed. One of the companies that jumped on the NFT bandwagon was Team 17, who I was normally a big fan of, and they've lost respect marks from me because of their controversial Meta Worms NFT project, which is an idea that they've now shelved because of massive amounts of backlash from fans, from development partners, from games communities. They've all expressed their concerns, and Team 17 have basically pulled the plug on the entire thing. So credit to them, they listened to people. Meanwhile, over at EA, Andrew Wilson, the CEO of Electronic Arts, has stated that the company is not currently focused on NFTs, but it will continue to evaluate their potential over time, which is unusual for EA because they would be one of the companies that I would say would be first on the bandwagon for potential NFTs. During EA's third quarter earnings call on Tuesday, Wilson acknowledged that NFTs are currently driving a lot of external investment in the games industry, but he also likened the current situation to previous investor enthusiasm for 3D, augmented reality, and VR. And we've seen how all three of those things have developed in games. Now, that's absolutely contrary to what's going on over at Ubisoft, who have responded to angry criticisms about NFT digits and quartz. In a recent interview with Finder, who spoke to Nicolas Pouard, the VP at Ubisoft's Strategic Innovations Lab, and Didier Genevois, Ubisoft's Blockchain Technical Director, we talked about him in one of the previous episodes, both Pouard and Genevois have basically said gamers don't understand NFTs, which again is utter bullshit. Yes, we do understand them. Just because we're not business people doesn't mean we don't know. Some of us might be quite young, and some of us might not be as worldly as others, but this is stuff that you can learn on the internet. Now, the interview itself is actually quite long, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about it, but I will link it in the description below, so have a read of it, and let me know what you think, because the overall reaction to Ubisoft's NFTs has been generally negative, and that seems to be the case throughout the games industry. Most gamers are negative about NFTs. Personally, I'm negative about NFTs. There is a caveat to that, but I will talk about that in a future episode of Impossible Mission, which is making a return as well. Anyway, moving on to adaptations. There's loads and loads and loads of adaptations, and we're going to kick off with American McGee's Alice. Of all of the games that's getting a TV adaptation, I never thought Alice would get one, because there's been so many different versions of Alice in Wonderland. Now, when it comes to video games, American McGee's Alice has always been a cult favourite, and David Hayter is the showrunner for the TV series. What they're hoping is that if the TV series is successful, it will convince EA to make a third Alice game. Now, I know Madness Returns wasn't really a stunning game for a lot of people, but I liked it and I want to see more of it. I thought it was interesting. It had some interesting ideas. Okay, the gameplay was a little bit dull, but I can forgive dull gameplay in favour of a good story, and Madness Returns was interesting at the very least. I would have liked to have seen various ideas explored more. I'm getting into video game review territory now. Let's stop there, move on to another adaptation, which is Hazelight Studios' It Takes Two. Yes, it's just recently won the Game of the Year at the Game Awards, and it's had all sorts of plaudits, and it is really, really an incredible game. It really is, if you've never played it. The game itself follows the adventures of Cody and May, two humans transformed into magical living dolls, and they're trapped in a fantastical world. That is getting a film and TV adaptation, which is being developed by DJ2 Entertainment, who are the company that developed the Sonic movie. And to anyone who's seen the Sonic movie, it is an enjoyable movie, and a lot of people are looking forward to the sequel. If they manage to do the same thing with It Takes Two, it could be a hit. But it's not the only thing that's actually being made into a movie, because there's been a rumour going around that Dwayne Johnson is working on a video game adaptation. In some circles, people thought God of War, because, hey, it's a big, bald, muscular dude. But according to Giant Freaking Robot, it's not God of War, it's Call of Duty. Now, Giant Freaking Robot have a good history of confirmations when it comes to this sort of thing. So, it probably is Call of Duty, I'd say. I'm 70% of the way, given their history. But I'm not ruling out God of War, because God of War would just fit. I mean, think about it. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, most of his movies involve him as a big bald guy running around hitting things with his big muscles. And what is God of War? It's a game where a big bald guy runs around hitting stuff with his big muscles. The story writes itself. You just need someone to play the role, and he could play the role. Just saying. Not only that, he does have a gravelly voice which could work on camera. Okay, it's not the same as Christopher Judge's voice, but it could still work. I mean, everyone poo-pooed the idea of Henry Cavill as Geralt of Rivia. Now everyone loves his version of Geralt. Again, just saying. Anyway, some sad news to kind of round things off, and it's to do with video game arcades. Sega have finally quit the Japanese arcade business after 56 years. I understood they got rid of the big store in Tokyo, and they were moving away from the arcade business because it wasn't conducive to their cash flow, things like that. They sold 85% of the shares in the Sega Entertainment division, which handled all the arcades, to a company called Genda for an undisclosed sum back in November 2020. And now the last 14.9% of the shares have been sold to Genda. All of the arcades are going to be rebranded as Jigo Arcades, which is an acronym for Get Into the Gaming Oasis. I'm happy to see that the arcades will still be going, but it's just sad not to see the Sega logo on them anymore. I mean, Sega have been a mainstay of video game arcades for decades, And for those of us who grew up with video game arcades, this is a sad day. I mean, we will never see the likes of that again. You can have all the gaming conventions you want. You can have all of the gaming clubs and all these things. The closest we've ever got to having the atmosphere of a video game arcade are the internet cafes, the PC bangs, places like that, where people were playing PC games or console games if they were console cafes, and people would gather around and play each other and stuff like that. That was the closest we ever got to having the arcade atmosphere, and it still just wasn't the same, because you would never have that situation where you would just be sitting at an arcade cabinet playing a fighting game and there would just be a line of coins and a queue of people just waiting to challenge whoever was the winner, because it was always winner stays on. Anyway, I'm not going to leave this in the nostalgia dumps. Let us know what you think about the stories that we've covered. That's pretty much it for this first episode of the new and improved GosuNews, formerly known as News Trash. I will see you all on the next episode. So until then, thanks for watching.